did not close to recognize him.
Oh, don't worry. We had him put on a wig. No, that wasn't Mario. That was me.
Oh, you see,
Yeah.
man. Look at you did a dual screen with yourself and yourself.
Hey, speaking of haircuts, can we get the explanation as to the upgrade in physical appearance here?
Well, the first answer I tell people it's stress related. My hair fell out. Here's the truth. This hair I wanted it gone for over a decade. My wife she's the one saying, "Oh, it's thinning," but it's seriously, that's what a dude says, an insecure dude. But she refused to tell me, to give me the blessing to shave my head. And I didn't want to deal with it. So I was like, whatever. And finally, I don't know what happened, but you had to come to Jesus moment or something. And fortunately, my hair's gone.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say, I don't know what happened. I'm just bald now. Like she just did in the middle of the night. Like it was like, oh, okay, it's time now, Jim. It's definitely time. We got to just make sure this is gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Well, for one, as somebody that I think, we could be brothers now. I think you look good.
Thank you.
Joe, we forgot to tell you, in order to be on this live stream, you need to incorporate the same look.
Well, it's ironic. I just got my hair cut about an hour ago. I was going to be on with two handsome guys. I'm like, man, I got to make sure my game is up to a little bit here. But yeah, if you would have told me that maybe an hour before, I would have just go ahead. We've been three company here with the bald heads.
Well, the reason we gathered here together today, folks, is that you guys participated in what I think is one of the best draft exercises the entire year. As soon as the real NFL draft is done, we get a room of experienced experts, put them in together, and see how ADP starts to form. Some of the players in the room, some of the experts have been drafting since January. Other ones are just walking in. And I think that's a good thing because it gives you a good mix of first thoughts, soured ADP, all that kind of stuff. So, of course, I'm here with Jim Coventry from RotoWire NFL, and I'm here with Joe Bartel. Of course, you hear him on SiriusXM. You see all his great draft articles on RotoWire.com. All right, guys, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to bring up the draft board, and I want to start with Joe. Joe, so what number did you pick in this draft right here?
I think it ended up being 9, and this would have been my second redraft that I've done thus far. I guess first one post-draft, which makes sense because this was Sunday that we did the draft as all the experts. And I was happy with that. I think what's going to end up happening by the end of August or maybe early August, we'll find that mid-tier spot, like the 6 through 9 range, is going to once again be one of the power plays because if you're getting those back-end snake rounds, you're able to get a quality second running back. And we'll talk about it, I'm sure, as we go on throughout the show. But that was a big concern for me that I wanted to have at least 2 running backs within the first 3 rounds like I normally do. And I felt kind of squeezed looking for guys that I really felt comfortable with in that spot. If I was like a little bit earlier on with the Jonathan Taylors, Derrick Henry's, that 1 and 2 pick, I would have felt a little bit more uncomfortable with those guys later on. So I was happy to be drafting in the middle round here.
Okay. And Jim, where did you pick in this draft?
I picked at the end, the 12 hole, had the back-to-back wrap picks.
I like the wrap picks, by the way. Those are always my favorite because I'm never, you have to reach when you're in those spots. You can't be afraid. You're never getting value. And if you do, it's very unusual. You're always having to think a little bit ahead of the field. Did you feel pressure during the draft? We'll get into the specifics though. Did you feel that or did it kind of fall to you?
I think I've been doing this too long because you always hear me say this. I live by my big board. And so, but you're right about one thing. When you know you're not going to pick
just one thing? Just one?
Just one for this time. But when you know when there's that long gap before you pick. Yes, sometimes you have to preemptively jump a position. So yes, so the big board is there, but you are absolutely correct. There are times if you sense a run on a position's coming and you don't want to be in the tail end of that, you may have to make that positional pick that wasn't your absolute first choice.
Joe, what was the format for this draft? How many receivers, PPR, PPR? Was it single quarterback? Give us the whole layout.
Yeah.
The layout
so one quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, tight end, flex was the starting roles. When we had put this together, it was supposed to be half-point PPR. I think it got reset, so then it was a full-point PPR. Jim, I'm not sure. You could correct me if I'm wrong. I thought we did this as a full-point PPR exercise, but I'm not sure my thought process would have changed much if it was half point. What were you drafting at half point or full point?
Well, I posted the question in the chat and I was ghosted. Nobody
answered.
And I don't know that I ever did get an answer, although I went on the Bob Harris and Mike Dempsey show at the end of the draft and they indicated PPR. So I was like, good, because that was how I drafted.
But is that like
it didn't change too much for me?
Yeah, Joe made the point though. He's like, does that really change so much? You know what? Give me an example, Joe. How just go from non-PPR to full PPR. Who's a player or two that you think that their ADP would be affected significantly?
Oh, how about Jim's guy, James Cook? Right. I mean, I think that will be it'll be really interesting. We're doing this draft. We're doing this fantasy draft literally a day after the NFL draft, so I have no idea how the Bills plan to utilize James Cook. And we saw J.D. McKissick get signed and then not signed by the Bills. So they clearly want a pass catching guy. The one skill set that James Cook is, I wouldn't say exceptional at, but I think above average from this class was his pass catching ability. So if you're saying, hey, let's get a JD McKissick like guy, I think a little bit more explosive and a better route runner in James Cook, that might have some value in a full point PPR format where he goes higher than the 7th round or 6th round, wherever Jim ended up taking him, I guess 8th round, but still on the turn. But if this is in a standard format and he's splitting time with both Devin Singletary and Mario Puig and John McKechnie's guy and Zach Moss, well, then maybe there isn't as much value in having a guy like James Cook. So I think that's one of those fulcrums from this position. And there's a few other ones, but actually, I don't know. I think we're still watching the depth charts kind of develop as we continue on throughout the offseason. There isn't as many obvious pass catchers, the James Whites of the world, that there's been in the past. So I think there's less of those names from a full point to standard perspective that we're going to have to be mindful of, at least right now, if you're drafting.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what a lot of people start their best ball drafting bonanza now, and Underdog just opened the best ball mania. So that's half PPR. So that really does split the difference. And I'm with you guys that half PPR, full PPR, I don't treat it that differently other than in the early rounds, I'm running back or bust. But let's just think about it like, okay, this draft that you guys had here, in the past, we've seen 12 of the first 13 picks go running back. 10 of the first 12 picks go running back. Do you think that strategy is going to be the same or different in 2022 regular redraft leagues?
We are creatures of habit, and the field tends to go heavy running back. But I noticed more in the last couple of years, the warts on the running backs after the first couple come off the board, they seem more prevalent than ever. There seem to be far fewer warts on the wide receivers. That chasm is growing larger, in my opinion. So I am going to look very carefully after the first 4 or 5 picks in a draft of going with a receiver early, because I just don't want the landmines these running backs are providing.
All right, Joe. So I'm looking right now where you picked. You took Justin Jefferson at the 9th overall pick. I love that pick. I would take Justin Jefferson as high as 2. You had to be thrilled to get him there. And especially I see players from experienced guys like Joe Mixon going in the top 5. I mean, I'm not going to tell somebody they're wrong for doing that, but did the first round surprise you up until the point? Who did you expect to get? And why did you choose Jefferson over Jamar Chase?
Yeah, I was anticipating Najee Harris. I mean, that was really the guy that I thought would fall at that point. And again, my strategy was I want at least 2 running backs within the first 3 picks. And I'm never beholden to one strategy. It really is whatever the board develops, especially when you're playing with experts like this. And I know this was a mock draft we had decided beforehand, but even still, I like to tell myself that us as professionals are doing this with the idea that if the league were to happen, other people are watching this, like they're basing their opinions off of what we're doing in some way. They're going to be doing it the correct way. So that's kind of where I was thinking that I'm going to get Najee Harris to fall. He was taking 1 pick before me, which was fine. You're right. I don't know about number 2. I think I would have Cooper Kupp number 1 in a full point setting like this. So Jonathan Taylor, Cooper Kupp. I think Eckler would have gotten up to that point. I don't mind Joe Mixon. So maybe we could have a debate about that a little bit later. I would have taken.
I don't mind him either. It's unusual because in the best ball drafts, I don't see it. I see him go in the 12-13 turn. Jim's
raising his hand like, I hate Joe Mixon. Right. And that's
You know what? I do want to make this statement because if people are watching this show, I want my stance on Mixon made early. Joe Mixon had a wonderful career season last year, but Joe Burrow was fully recovered in the Bengals' mind in week 12. That's when they turned him loose. Joe Mixon put up very scant fantasy points once they became a pass-heavy team, and that went through the playoffs. It was almost a 9 or 10 game sample where he was a borderline running back 1, but more like a high-end 2. after that week 7 to 12, he went completely nuclear. People are looking at the body of his season. The Bengals they had 3 or 4 games when he had 28 carries. He didn't see 20 only one time the rest of the way. So that offense is all about the quarterback now. Mixon is going to be a trap in the first round because people are expecting that's going to happen. It's the passing game in Cincinnati.
I don't see Mixon going as a top 5 pick. I understand why somebody would do it, but I don't think that that's how it's going to play out based on the best ball drafts that I've done already. And usually those aren't an exact footprint of what redraft looks like, but it's close enough. All right, Joe, you brought up Cooper Kupp. Is he the legitimate 1-2? Like when it comes down to it, is he going? I mean, we all know Jonathan Taylor is going to go 1-1. There's not, I can't see a credible draft where Jonathan Taylor is not the 1-1. First of all, do you agree with that statement? And is there a definite 1-2? Like, who are you going to tell the people that ask you to take at the second pick?
Yeah, I think we had this conversation about Cooper Kupp in February or January. And I was thinking 1-4, 1-5 in this setting, in a full point PPR setting like we were drafting in. Cooper Kupp is 1.2. And it's a no-brainer slam dunk, in my opinion. Jonathan Taylor's 1-1. I agree. There's no arguments about that. I think the Colts actually got a lot better in a lot of phases to make Jonathan Taylor be even more successful of a fantasy player. You're always looking for the ceilings or the floors, and hey, Jonathan Taylor might have a higher floor than everyone else since we're drafting at 1.1. I actually think his ceiling still makes him a 1.1 overall pick. But Cooper Kupp, I get it. He will not be able to replicate his numbers like he did last year. I'm not breaking some new ground by saying that statement. There's no way he'll be able to produce that kind of production. Even 85 or 80% of Cooper Kupp, I think, is going to be more than worth a first-round pick. You can do a lot of things wrong, and you can break your draft by picking somebody in the first round, but you want to be smart and I think maintain some flexibility roster-wise and also be safe. That's what Cooper Kupp is to me, and I'll be glad to take him at 1.2.
Yeah, I'm not scared that they signed Allen Robinson there, but I do think that's a significant signing. Combine that with regression, and that's why I suggested maybe that Justin Jefferson can be the second or the first wide receiver off the board because there's no change to his target share. He's getting 10, 11, 12 targets off the bus, whereas Cooper Kupp, we hope he is, but the addition of Allen Robinson could be significant. So again, that difference alone. Jim, weigh in on that part.
Yes, what I want fantasy managers to understand is toward the end of the season last year, Sean McVay started to change his offense up. Now, what he did, this started actually week 17, week 18 in the wild card game against Arizona. And he started to run the ball more. This coincided near the time Cam Akers was coming back. And look, he wasn't himself. I get that. In those 3 straight games against teams that were easy to pass on, Cooper Kupp saw 7 targets, and 7 targets. Now they got desperate with Tampa Bay and in the, the last Super Bowl game in the conference championship. Yeah. But look, those 3 7-target games, those are by far his lowest of the season. They were in consecutive games. Allen Robinson is going to be the X receiver on that team. Odell Beckham was a miscast X. He's a stretch Z, downfield threat. Allen Robinson can win in tight coverage, and Matthew Stafford loves that. So Robinson's going to cut into the target share. They're going to run the ball more. Cooper Kupp, we are paying for a career legendary season. He's going to be great this year. But I think there's going to be a significant drop-off because that 3-game sample tells me what Sean McVay really wants to do.
Yeah, and you can't argue that it was successful, too, so I understand that. All right, I'm going to ask you both. I'll ask Joe first. No tight ends in the first round this year. I thought for sure once Tyreek Hill was traded that Travis Kelce, just on projected targets alone, would make it back into the first round. Not to be. He went around pick 2.5. So where are you going to be, 1, on Travis Kelce, and 2, on the tight end market? Where do you plan on shopping this year?
Yeah, so the issue ends up being I really think there's value in those later round tight ends. I thought my biggest miss was David Njoku in round 13, right? And I know that's maybe probably a joke, but I really liked
no
where my draft went.
Nice.
Good job, Alan. No, I really like those later round guys, and whether it be, and you could pick whoever it is, even if Gronkowski signs back with the Buccaneers, he's out of that mix. But I'm thinking like a Dawson Knox of sorts, and there's more of those names. You can have your pet favorite, Mike Gesicki, jumped to my mind as well too. Whoever it is, I don't care. One of those guys will probably be around later on who can be your low end tight end 1, and you can partner him with another low end tight end 1, which is what I was trying to do in this draft. So I just don't like investing a super high pick in a tight end because it's not drafting a wide receiver. There is more value in wide receivers later on. So I understand the difference, like you're having an upper echelon tight end. I just struggle roster construction wise when I take a tight end in the first 2 rounds because I'm really worried about getting the running backs. And in a draft where we're not playing it out, I want to make sure I have the value appropriate to what the users are seeing. And whereas I could say, oh, I know I'm going to get, I don't know, the Tony Jones, right, the backup running back for the Saints, I will get him in a league that we're playing in every single time or whatever the equivalent of that is. We can't really represent that in the mock draft. So I really try to be accurate to what the viewers would be seeing so they can have an appropriate decision point when they're making their roster lineups too.
Yeah, a professional mocker. That's what Joe Bartel is known for. I appreciate, and actually, I do appreciate that. Jim, same question to you because this is a strategy that I struggle with every year. I feel like I wait on tight end, and then I'm just constantly stressed trying to pick up a new tight end. Shopping in the middle often fails. You end up with the Robert Tonyan after his breakout year. How are you going to handle tight ends next year?
So I will wait 6 rounds, get the lay of the land, and probably the standard ones will be off the board. And then depending how the draft board falls, at the point where I picked, which was at the 7-8 term, I wanted to see what running backs and receivers were available. And if I preferred one of them, I would go that route. But I begin to factor tight ends into my equation there. When I got to the 7-8 term, Dallas Goddard was there. 6 tight ends were off the board. I see him. Look, he's a high floor option. Is he going to be a crazy high producer? Probably not because they're going to run a lot. They have A.J. Brown. The A.J. Brown addition helps Goddard, though, because Goddard was treated almost like a number 1 by some defenses last year. He's going to have room to roll. So I start shopping around there. But I'm happy, like Joe said. I'm very happy to wait. I noticed Zach Ertz went in the 10th round of this draft. I like Zach Ertz, especially now, and that was before we found out DeAndre Hopkins was down for 6 games. Now, that probably bumps Ertz ADP up. But like Joe said, there are a good number of tight ends that you could go with. And if you're going to go with one later, you almost have to draft 2 because they're like lottery tickets. And so you need to grab 2 because obviously an extra dart helps you with one that might actually hit.
In leagues, though, where you have 5 or 6 bench, I agree with the strategy, but I'm just saying in leagues where you have 5 or 6 bench spots, I always, thought, and the advice I gave people was if you do go tight end early, at least you have that extra bench spot to get the 1 injury away running back. But obviously, if you take an elite tight end, that's where you could have had an elite running back. So it's constantly balancing that back and forth. I'm going to ask you each question now about your specific roster, something that popped out to me. I'll start with Joe this time. Joe, you broke the rookie wide receiver seal. You took Drake London. Yeah, I like where you got him. You got him as wide receiver 32. So, essentially you're planning on starting him right away as your 3rd wide receiver. What do you expect from Drake London? Is pro ready? Give me your prospect evaluation on him. And do you like the landing spot? And where do you see him going after you talk about him from there in rookie drafts? Because he's all over the board right now in the 5 drafts I've done that are rookie drafts.
Yeah, when we do drafts with this many experts, I always get a little bit worried. And maybe this is when I get to year 10 of being in this professional business as opposed to 6, I can be like, oh, I'll have confidence in my choices and it'll be fine. You don't want to get mocked, right? Like that's the biggest concern when you go out on a limb like this. But I hope this is fine. And I saw like Breece Hall going number 3 or in the 3rd round. That felt a little bit rich to me, but it was clear that they were just trying to get some content for the show, which I'm totally for. Again, I'm a professional mocker, as you say, Alan. So this was important to me that I felt like I drafted Drake London where I would actually do it in a real draft.
No, it's a good spot. I like the spot for him. I think you actually got a value.
We've been doing these now for quite a while. We've been doing. I was part of the initial rookie draft that you put together, and we did the round 2 a little bit later on. I've been pretty consistent saying Drake London was my number 1 wide receiver overall. Do I feel good that the NFL agreed with me? Yes, of course I do. But I think this is a great spot for London overall. My draft actually kind of came down to I am totally fine taking the wide receivers on SHITTY teams, right? Like DK Metcalf. I'm totally fine with that value as well, too, even if it's Drew Lock throwing him 10 balls that might get him hospitalized by the end of the week, too. Like that works for me. And I think the same thing's going to happen for Drake London as well. There is Kyle Pitts there. But even if it's Marcus Mariota or Desmond Ridder, who that's a different dynasty question that I'll be really excited to find out over the next couple of weeks. Throwing him the ball, I think Drake London is going to be in a position to be a 80 catch, 1,000-yard receiver almost as a floor. That's in the 6th round. Yeah, absolutely sign me up for that wide receiver 3 value. And there's potential for it to be even better. We have seen rookie wide receivers over the last 2 or 3 years in better situations. I'll give you that. Be super successful fantasy assets. I see no reason why Drake London, from a talent perspective, can't do the same thing.
Yeah, and you got to like what Arthur Smith was able to do with A.J. Brown in his earlier years as well. He's not afraid to throw it to the rookie now over in Atlanta there. And Jim, so I'm looking down your roster, and like any good fantasy strategy, you target the Chicago Bears. I mean, that's the optimal strategy. But you did get the two that actually have value. I'll give you that. So you took David Montgomery after going wide receiver early. I like, of course, what's not to like about him at RB 19. And then you went for Darnell Mooney, who I am shocked is still not the oldest player on that roster. They drafted a rookie, Velus Jones, who is going to get his AARP card soon. So, all right, everyone's going to goof on the Bears. The narrative is already that Justin Fields has nothing to help them, but you got the two guys that probably have value. I want you to talk about those two guys. Are those guys going to be the best values at their current ADPs right now?
Yeah, I think so. Am I excited that I have two Bears in my roster? Probably not. But when you have such a narrow consolidation of touches, honestly, give me that volume. And the Bears, their defense does not project to be very good, so they're going to trail a lot. Look, Darnell Mooney showed down the stretch last year that he's not a real number one receiver, but he was used as one, and he produced as one. And there's no reason to expect the reason that we're not going to get a second-year jump, especially as Justin Fields has to lean on him. So Mooney is so clearly the target leader in that clubhouse. That's going to be crazy. Now, David Montgomery, we like Khalil Herbert, but even after Herbert had those 4 big games, Montgomery had all the touches. Like, Herbert had no more than 5 in a game. That was insane. So Montgomery's last year of his deal, they'll probably just run him into the ground. He was 20.5 touches per game. Give me that volume all day long, right?
Yeah, you guys are everyone out there that's joined us in the chat. Thank you for doing that. You're seeing right now, I'm with Jim Coventry and Joe Bartel. There it is, of RotoWire, and we are talking about the SiriusXM Experts Draft that they just participated. You can see the draft board up on the board right there, and it'll also be linked in the video description below. Jim, just real quick before I go back to Joe, you got Lamar Jackson as the QB 10. I have him as QB 3 or QB 4 right now. I know he lost Marquise Brown, but this guy was an MVP based on his legs a couple years ago. You had to be thrilled there, or do you think is this going to be his new ADP?
It very well could be his new ADP. That would not surprise me. I mean, he's got Rashad Bateman, he's got Mark Andrews, but see, they're going to run the ball a ton. They drafted 2 more tight ends, and they gave him 4th-round draft capital. There's a 12-personnel team, very heavy run. They were 57% run 2 years ago. Their defense is likely fixed due to additions and the draft, but Jackson is still going to get it done as a runner. So obviously QB 10, extremely happy with that. I have him as my QB 6. What surprised me is that Aaron Rodgers went the pick before him. Aaron Rodgers will be lucky to throw for 4,000 yards. Who is he throwing to, right? And they've been able to keep his yardage down, his attempts down. He doesn't have Devonte Adams. I don't know in what universe you're seeing Aaron Rodgers as a QB1. But yes, very happy with Lamar Jackson there. But his ADP probably falls significantly from where it was at.
Yeah, I'm going to have Aaron Rodgers behind Derek Carr, neck and back-to-back with Tua right now. I don't like Aaron Rodgers at all this year. I'll have him as QB 14 or 15 right now. I could change that. Joe, the thing that I think you had a lot of sharp moves in this draft. I was checking out like the actual strategy of it, but the one I really like the best is the Dak Prescott and Dalton Schultz combination there. You got him as tight end 8 or 9, Dalton Schultz. I have him as tight end 3. So I know I'm
maybe a bit higher. I'm like, I don't know if I don't think they're going to produce it the same way. Like I think Schultz's last year was more of a byproduct of Amari Cooper being ineffective at times and CeeDee Lamb being ineffective or inconsistent. Maybe more is the better word.
Who do they have
Gallup
this year?
being hurt too.
They no Gallup for the first couple of months. They have CeeDee Lamb, and then who's the other pass catcher? It's Dalton Schultz. I'm not saying he's good. I'm just saying he's there.
Yeah, but I think it's more like Are you happy with, I guess I go because I'm a product of the grades in the grade system where you have to get A, B's, and C's. Otherwise, you're a failure to everyone and your parents. Like, are you jacked about a B- grade? No, you could show it to your parents and be like, I did the best I could in pottery class, but I got a B-. Like, that's what I think Dalton Schultz is to me. I'm not like super excited to have him as my tight end 3, whereas Kyle Pitts, upside humongous in my opinion. Even George Kittle, if he's by somehow miraculously able to put together even a 15-game season, that's like the A in the pottery class grade that you're really excited for. I'm not sure if pottery was a class that you guys did in the 40s, but definitely in like the 2000s. I don't know, so I'm not sure why I'm saying that. I was a little bit shrewd with my choice, and again, the way I was trying to do this draft was representative of how normal ones. So I kind of went sneaky with the Michael Gallup play first, knowing there might be a potential Cowboy stack that I could put together if the board breaks out my way. And then I had Dak Prescott next. I actually took Dak Prescott before Lamar. If I hadn't been planning the Dalton Schultz Michael Gallup combo, I might have taken Lamar before Jim did in that round. But really, I think Dak at quarterback 8 or even quarterback 6 in that range, totally fine for me. I think the Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard combo isn't going to be as effective. If they're going to win, it's because of Dak and the pass catchers, and Schultz fits into that. And then to get him in 10, the tight end Dalton Schultz, I felt really good about the sneaky Cowboy stack that I think will be, again, a safer play than most when you're doing these types of drafts.
I'm going to come to you in a second, Jim, but I was just going to say, I just want to make a correction. I have Schultz at tight end 4 behind Andrews, Pitts, and Kelsey. Yeah. So, but you don't have to take him there.
I did want to make a point on Dalton Schultz, and obviously I'm the film guy. I'm always watching the film. Last year, defenses did not cover Dalton Schultz. They were very concerned with Lamb and Cooper, and that was all they worried about. When you watch the film, Schultz was just standing open in the middle of the field. He now could be their second most reliable target. Michael Gallup coming back from a serious injury. If Dalton Schultz gets covered, he's a garbage tight end. End of story. Blake Jarwin was their guy. He got hurt, didn't look good, but Schultz was open all season. I don't think he's open this season. I don't think teams forget him. They also will look back. Teams do not do very well scouting in season. They make adjustments the next year. The Dalton Schultz adjustment's coming. He's not athletic, doesn't do anything particularly well other than when nobody's covering him, take advantage of it.
Yeah, that it's an interesting to kind of parse that out, because there's already some talk that Tony Pollard is going to be used as a wide receiver at times as well until they get Jalen Tolbert up to speed. And you could see it, right? You know, you have Zeke in the backfield. They want to get Pollard onto the field. What better way than maybe put him in the slot, a couple short routes. So we'll see how that all goes down.
I heard that about Mr. Broken Foot Etienne too last year, and that was a joke. I'm not buying that whatsoever.
It's an incomplete with Etienne, right? It's a total incomplete.
No, I took the one on that. I said Etienne was going to be a reach where he was being drafted, and by golly, he was, because he didn't play. That's W.
Yeah, you know what? You do get the W on that, but I'm curious to see. I mean, he's not getting discounted this year. You talked about Travis Etienne. Okay, let's see where he went in this draft. I'm just looking at the draft board that you guys submitted. So he went as RB. If you guys see
23.
Yeah,
okay, RB 23.
So that's discounted, because in best ball drafts, he goes in the 3rd round, but that's also because those type of drafts are a little bit more running back hungry. Jim, you were able to get Devonte Adams in the same ADP as he went last year, but for very different reasons. Last year in early drafts, He was going at the end of the 1st round because we weren't sure Aaron Rodgers was going to play or hold out. This year, he's downgraded, air quotes, to Derek Carr. Is it really a downgrade? Isn't he still Devonte Adams, right?
It's a downgrade. It is, and it's a significant downgrade. But his floor is exceptionally high, and Darren Waller's there, and we can't even dismiss Hunter Renfrow. He is an integral part of that offense. Devonte Adams will be the target leader, but he's not going to see the 30% target share that he had with Aaron Rodgers. We're looking more at 23, 24%. But he's still elite, and like I said, at that point of the draft, the fact that he has that floor made me say, yep, I'm going to push the button, and I am going to draft Devonte Adams right at that spot.
Alan, can you scroll up? I want the listeners to see that 1st round draft, because I actually have a little bit, or maybe I'm just like not able to see. I'm looking at like 2nd round.
How does that now look?
Okay, that's good. Yeah. So
you know what? I have 2 tabs open. I was in the wrong tab.
Perfect. Okay, so CeeDee Lamb, Deebo Samuel directly after Jim, and Jim obviously took CeeDee Lamb, which I thought was a great pick, and I was hoping to get him in the 2nd round, like on my 4th pick there. I might take Stephon Diggs, and I'm definitely taking Tyreek Hill over Devonte Adams. You mentioned it's a downgrade. I completely agree with you in that regards. It's not just the 30% target share that he's not getting in Las Vegas. I almost said Oakland. In Las Vegas, Devonte Adams' game isn't as chemistry dependent as like Jordy Nelson was. But there are certainly shades, those back shoulder throws, which were a given on just about every time they wanted to go ahead and do that. That's not there. I don't care that he played with his Fresno State quarterback from 10 years ago. You don't have that chemistry on those back shoulder throws. And that was so much of Devonte Adams' game. You also have Hunter Renfrow, who I think is a tremendous underneath target. Yep. Darren Waller, who theoretically is still there. The Raiders made a number of free agent signings as well, too. We don't really know how this Josh McDaniel offense works. I want upside at one of those wide receivers. Maybe that is CeeDee Lamb, but that's where I'd rather have Tyreek Hill or even Stephon Diggs, where there's the floor and also the upside over more than Devonte Adams.
Yeah, Tyreek Hill is one of the players that's getting discounted, but the Devonte Adams is not. And like you said, the 10 years ago, I mean, you ever talk to some of your college buddies from 10 years ago? They're not the same guy, you know?
Thankfully, for my college buddies, they are not the same guy. Yeah.
Thankfully, exactly. I'm not the same guy, you know? Yeah. So, all right, let's Jim, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. In early drafts, before Jalen Waddle was going high as the second round, Tyreek Hill gets traded. Jalen Waddle falls to the fifth round. Tyreek Hill drops one round from going at the end of the first to the end of the second. How should fantasy managers deal with those two guys?
Look, the problem is that offense to be diversified, and they're going to be somewhat balanced. Tyreek Hill is going to have the situation. He has a popgun arm quarterback. So they're not going to hit these downfield strikes. That's not going to happen. He's going to have to be more of the receiver that he was in the second half of the season when the Chiefs adjusted to two high shell defenses. And that was with Patrick Mahomes, and they weren't able to go downfield. Tyreek Hill, since he had the 1,400-yard season in 2018, he hasn't hit 1,300 yards since, and that's with Mahomes. I think we've seen the best of Tyreek Hill. His career year was 2018, and things are not getting better going from Mahomes to Tua. Jalen Waddle obviously suffers because that massive target share he saw down the stretch, he's got to share that with Tyreek. And there are going to be plays going to Mike Gesicki and Chase Edmonds to get his share out of the backfield. But I don't think this is going to be an uber high volume passing attack. I don't think they want Tua to be that. Remember, this coaching staff comes in from the 49ers, and they want to implement those principles. Now, I don't know if their offensive line could cash the check, but they want to be a little more run-based. They want their receivers schemed well. But if that system goes in as planned, this is not a team that's throwing the ball 650 times.
Yeah, so you talk about like college roommates or teammates. I mean, Waddle and Tua. Why isn't it applied to them as well? All right, Joe, I want you. You're a Packers fan. You have some good deep analysis on the Packers. I think you got the single best value of the entire draft. Aaron Jones at RB17. I have him at RB9. I mean, Devonte Adams leaving helps Aaron Jones, right? So
yeah.
Why is he going so late? You got him in the deep into the third round. And what's going to be the fantasy split between him and A.J. Dillon this year?
Yeah, I think the concern lies a little bit how efficient can that Packers offense be overall. You guys talked about Aaron Rodgers being essentially a low-end quarterback one for you, and I don't disagree. I guess I'd say if you believe Aaron Rodgers is going to be quarterback 9 or wherever he's being drafted, quarterback 8, then Christian Watson better darn well be in the top 4 of your drafts. And I did not see Christian Watson get drafted that high. It's just going to be hard for Aaron Rodgers to be that effective. If he were to be, Aaron Jones might be more the beneficiary. And I could absolutely see the Packers offense, especially early on as you get Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson more acclimated to that offense. Aaron Jones could be split out wide, and you have A.J. Dillon be the running back. I mean, we have seen times where when Devonte Adams was out, Aaron Jones was the wide receiver 1 for that team. I know it sounds crazy, and I know Aaron Jones has been injury problematic. It's not like Christian McCaffrey injury prone or Saquon Barkley, but he's missing some games, and I think more usage would put Aaron Jones theoretically in a spot to miss more time, and that's why they drafted A.J. Dillon in the second round to avoid that scenario occurring. But if you have the high-end Aaron Jones, who is a wide receiver at times for that Packers offense, also being the red zone threat that he is and being out of the backfield at times, yeah, I don't know in a full point PPR setting why he's being drafted in the third round. I was considering him with my second round selection. I thought I'll get ahead of the curve with Javonte Williams, and maybe something weird happens with DeAndre Swift is really who I thought was going to fall. And he was the next running back taken afterwards. Yeah, I will gladly take Aaron Jones in the second round ahead of Ezekiel Elliott, ahead of James Conner, Elijah Mitchell, Breece Hall. I think Fournette is an interesting one, but in most non-savvy drafts, I think you can get Leonard Fournette a little bit later on, kind of like David Montgomery. Aaron Jones by no means should be falling to this point, and I imagine by beginning of August we'll have Aaron Jones in top 15 conversation.
If you take Cooper Kupp with the second overall pick, you are thrilled to get Aaron Jones on the 2-3 turn. Oh my God. Go ahead, Jim.
So yeah, I want to make a confirmation with Joe, but I also want to answer why the fantasy community is going to be down on Aaron Jones. They're going to look back at last year, and they're going to see that it was getting very close to an even split between A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. And fantasy managers are not going to be able to get their mind around that. And they're going to think the Packers are going to take a step back on offense and they're going to be lower volume. That's why his ADP is low. But Joe hit the nail on the head, and I don't have to repeat the whole story, but his usage in the receiving game is going to go dramatically up. And like Joe said, we could see both Dillon and Jones on the field. So this is a great buying opportunity. So Joe, spot on. It was a phenomenal pick, and you got to steal there.
Yeah, the player that I didn't hear either of you mention, who I've been getting in almost all of my drafts, is Alan Lazard. Right now he's going as wide receiver 46. Yeah. I would take him as high as wide receiver 36. I would have for redraft, I would almost consider him over Drake London. Obviously, London's the way sexier pick, but you don't need to take him there. He's going in the 40s and 50s, but I'm just talking about from production. You know, you have the rookie. Alan Lazard is, we all know Aaron Rodgers is a trust guy, right? You have to trust him. He's got to trust you in order to throw you the football. Who's he trusting that team? Maybe you could say Robert Tonyan for some touchdowns, but as you saw in the offseason, Robert Tonyan's contract is based on games he's activated. He's not guaranteed money. He's only getting paid when he's on the active game day roster, which signals that they're not sure about his injury, right? So
I like that. I like the Lazard thing. And there's really no reason why I'm pivoting from him. But I think you're drafting him with the idea that, hey, he's going to get, upwards of 67 receptions and probably 1,000 receiving yards. I mean, that's at minimum what you would anticipate in this offense. I actually would be fine saying Alan Lazard is going to be an 8 to 10 touchdown kind of player. I think that's where the value lies for me. So it's Aaron Jones will get the carries. A.J. Dillon, Quadzilla should get the carries. Devonte Adams was a huge factor in the red zone, and not enough people are really discussing that. Alan Lazard is more than capable. I think you saw towards the end of the season, that was the chemistry Aaron Rodgers was looking for, those middle slot slants where Devonte Adams was successful on the outside. Lazard was doing them on the inside when defenses were over-catering to Devonte Adams. I don't know if you're a defense and planning how to stop Aaron Rodgers. It's not by focusing on one player, and I think that's where Alan Lazard would be a really beneficiary. Like, I don't know what prop bets are going to be out, and certainly by the next 2 months, there'll probably be more, but I'll probably take the over on whatever Alan Lazard's touchdown prop bet will be this season.
Yeah. If it's 6.5 or 7, something like that, you still like the over?
I would imagine I'm getting plus money for that. And yeah, I'll gladly take the over on it.
Go ahead, Jim.
Now, Lazard's best quality as an NFL player is he is an immensely good blocker. They use him in so many ways in the blocking game. I wonder if he will be perceived as the number one threat. I know Watson, the rookie's in, so I don't know if he gets that treatment. But if Alan Lazard is treated as a number one, is he able to get the short area explosiveness and agility to shake free from defenders in the short area? I'm questioning that. He's been a very good deep threat over the years, but he hasn't been a very nuanced route runner. So I just wonder if his role lends more to the MVS role and the role that that Lazard's had in the past. But I don't know if you just pencil him in and say, well, he'll be the number one now. I don't know if he can handle that.
Yeah, it's a volume play with him. That if you're drafting Alan Lazard, you're banking on volume. You're banking on 6 to 8 targets a game and a couple 10 target games. If you don't believe in it, you move on to the next guy. The price is not that high. Jim, in your draft, you did something that I've been doing a lot in my best ball drafts. I've been taking these end game guys that are so boring, but I think they're my most owned players. J.D. McKissick in PPR leagues, Jamison Crowder, who is a savvy slot guy. Are you targeting? Are these like the guys that you target, or just Jacoby Myers? He's so unsexy. I mean, he's allergic to the end zone, right? He got in, and it was like they won the Super Bowl. So yes. Talk about some of those end game guys. usually receivers are tough to target there. Who are some of the talk about those guys that you've drafted and maybe some of the other guys that you might have been targeting in the double digits?
Yeah, I think a lot of times you look at the end rounds and we're looking at these guys that we think might, if the stars align right, made this huge breakout season. And that late, it usually doesn't happen so much. So if there are players on the board that they're a lock for targets, well, for bye weeks, for injuries, getting fill-in players, yeah, Jacoby Myers is a guy that you could fill in as a wide receiver 3 for when you need him. And Jamison Crowder goes to the Bills now, and he's hurt all the time. So if we play this out, if he gets hurt, you drop him. It's the end of the day. But ultimately, he's an upgrade on Cole Beasley, who was starting to decline due to age last year. Crowder's a very, very good receiver. Still, when healthy, has some gas in the tank. And in that explosive offense, yes, I mean, a player like that is good to target late. I even got Chase Claypool late, the 10th round. Understandably, people are out on him because they saw last year, well, Ben couldn't throw the ball deep, and Claypool's a deep threat. And not that, Kenny Pickett or Mitch Trubisky are great deep ball passers, but I think that at least they give them a chance to compete. So late receivers. So I think these are some players with talent and opportunity. And I think that's what we target late when they're available on the board.
Jim, I'm going to jump in there because I have a question. How do you think Chase Claypool could be traded? Because I actually think the Steelers are priming for Chase Claypool to be sent somewhere else.
How about the Packers?
Ooh, wow. Yeah, I could totally see that. But I think they would have made that trade pre-draft. It can happen, of course, but pre-draft is when you can get something of current value, knowing what you're getting. When you trade a player after the draft, it's an indeterminate draft pick that you're getting. And I don't even know what they would get for him at this point.
Jim, they didn't know that they were getting George Pickens and Calvin Austin.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but yeah, I don't think you'd get it. That's what they paid for, but I don't think you're getting that. Unless they're chasing those 10 touchdowns, which most of them came in 2 games. I think at this point you're getting a 4th rounder for him, and then you have to decide, is that worth giving up the player? I mean, or maybe you get another position of need on the defense, or off maybe a guard, something like that, to a needy team. I don't know what the Packers have a surplus of, but you're definitely not getting your money back at this point.
See, I disagree. I'm going to jump ahead, Jim. Sorry, I apologize for cutting in. I don't know. There's too many teams post NFL draft that still have really obvious needs at wide receiver. And I know some of them were addressed in like the Drake London thing and Garrett Wilson going to your Jets, Allen. Like those were all good landing spots for these players. I don't know. The Packers are one, but I don't think the Chiefs really, I know everyone loves Sky Moore. I think there's a certain wide receiver that they're still very, very much missing. And the MVS and Mecole Hardman and Sky Moore all do the one thing, but they don't have if Josh Gordon was actually good.
Do you like Juju? You don't like Juju?
No, that's one guy. I mean, like Travis Kelce and Juju are one, and then I think there still could be more. Like how dependent that offense is on passing. I think they could still utilize wide receivers, and I think there's more teams out there that are going to find value. And we watched the wide receiver value grow even more as the draft progressed, right? With A.J. Brown being traded, and then Marquise Brown for a first-round pick. Like I think Claypool could easily go for a second. With the needs that NFL teams still have, and with George Pickens kind of filling that same role that Claypool would get, I could see him being moved. I really could.
Yeah, there has to be a team. It might not even be a pick. It could be another team that has a surplus at a need that the other teams. Just think about in your fantasy league, right? How do trades happen when 2 teams have surpluses at matching positions? Go ahead, Jim.
No, not much else to add. I just do know you guys are right. Based on Pittsburgh last year talked about maybe maturity issues that Claypool had. And of other teams since that, I don't think that's bad with a receiver because as a fantasy player, we see these guys produce when they're given the ball. But NFL organizations, if they see him as a potential, if that immaturity stuff is actually true about him, teams may balk on going after him. Now, it's also possible from the Steelers' perspective, look, he's a young man. Young men grow up. I was more of an idiot then than I am now. Still am a bit of an idiot, but yeah, I grew up. And so if he went through that maturity spike, he could be really valuable wherever he goes, whether that's in Pittsburgh or elsewhere.
Yeah, so Joe makes a good point there. Maybe that there is a little bit more value, especially in the inflated wide receiver market.
I'm gonna tag in one more time because I don't want us to get too off topic. I think I'm going to say his name, Kevin Bachlich, in the comment section right now,
Mhm.
is talking about one of my favorite players from this entire draft. I basically wrote a love sonnet for Isaiah Spiller when I wrote up his Chargers note. Like, you can go on RotoWire.com, type in Isaiah Spiller, and you can just watch me vomit profusely nice things about Isaiah Spiller the entire time over the page. I don't think people understand the value that's going to happen with Isaiah Spiller. Now, this group was great. I thought they correctly identified. I think he was like running back. I don't know. He was like around 10, around 9. I was surprised to see where he went. I thought I wouldn't take him there, but I was surprised that other people saw that same value. If you have been following the Chargers over the past 12 months, and I have, I do the Chargers coverage for RotoWire, they were almost like begging somebody to step up other than Austin Eckler. They were like pleading, universe, please give us somebody that doesn't suck at running back besides Austin Eckler, because we don't want to give our star guy another 200 carry, 100 catch kind of season. They don't want to do that. I understand it limits Eckler's possibilities, like the ceiling more, and that's what the Chargers are trying to do, kind of use Eckler for later on. Spiller is going to be in the same vein as A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones that we were talking about earlier, that 1A and 1B, and people are not recognizing that enough from all the post-draft coverage that I've seen. I think Spiller can be a 3-down back. He's not going to be asked to be. He can get the short yard stuff, which is great. That's really, if they were asking for one thing, the Chargers, it'd be a guy that can get a 3rd and 1. I think that's for Spiller could be fantastic. But I love his utility, and I think the Chargers are giving him upwards of 150, 200 carries immediately, and that's not counting his targets as well too.
Yeah, Austin Eckler was begging for some relief,
yes,
and obviously, and so he's not going to be pissed about it either. So that is a pretty good call there. And there was 2 players that were thought of pretty highly in the pre-draft process and dropped a little bit because of athletic testing or lack of athletic testing.
Yep.
Spiller was one of them. David Bell was the other one that dropped, and the Browns got a great. Yep, you were big on David Bell in our first rookie mock draft. I took him at pick 13, I believe. So, I think he's solidly back in the 2nd round of rookie drafts again. He was drafted in this draft. I saw.
By me. That's why I was raising my hand.
Okay, all right.
He was drafted by me. I don't know. Like, I get some people think Jarvis Landry might come back to the Browns. I don't know why the Browns would want to do that. They're going to be paying $18 million for Pouty.
Yeah. I think Landry goes to the Bears. I think that Landry to the Bears makes sense.
Fine. He's not going to the Browns. That's where people think this is going to happen. If he goes to the Browns, then all my David Bell hype goes away, and I understand that. But right now, we're thinking of this Browns office like it's led by Baker Mayfield. And your frustrations aside, and certainly mine as well too, with Deshaun Watson getting the contract, the trade that he did to the Browns, this is going to be a better offense, presumably once he comes back from whatever suspension is given to him. I love David Bell to fill that exact same Jarvis Landry spot. And if you were to ask me right now who is a late round sleeper flyer type of player who I think is going to be a wide receiver 3 or 4 for your fantasy teams, it's David Bell in a landslide for that offense. They don't have anybody like him. They have a lot of deep guys. They have a lot of intermediate threats, but somebody underneath that's not going to be David Njoku, or I guess in this case, Austin Hooper before. I think David Bell can fit great. And then you have no worries about that athleticism part, which I think is overblown anyway. Like, you can't produce how he did at Purdue in the Big Ten and not have some bit of athleticism. I think David Bell is going to be fantastic value for a lot of people.
Yeah, there's a correlation more with running backs and athleticism than there is for wide receivers and athleticism. The production seems to correlate a little bit more with NFL success for wide receivers as a general rule. Jim, you were talking a little bit before about some of the late round guys, and I wanted to not ask you about the late rounders. Actually, I want to, I'm going to scratch that question. I want to talk about the Eagles for a moment here. A.J. Brown's ADP rightfully has dropped a little bit. It's not an upgrade for a situation, but where do you are going to draft A.J. Brown, and what does this do for Devontae Smith's fantasy value? And then, of course, tie in the QB to all that. How are you handling the Eagles in redraft this year?
It's a very difficult offense to handicap. The strength of the team is their offensive line. They realized it during the bye week last year. They pre-bye, they were a full-time shotgun offense throwing the ball. They were unsuccessful. After the bye, they were a run-first team that would throw off of that, and they made the NFL playoffs because they went to that style. Now, they bring in A.J. Brown, absolutely correct. It adds a dynamic to the passing game, but I still think this team is going to run more than we like, and they'll be able to set the pass up off it. I don't think it's a super high volume passing attack. I don't think they want to put that at Jalen Hurts' plate. I still think this team is angling for what they're going to be like in 2023, whether it's with Hurts or someone else. A.J. Brown, in theory, helps Devonte Smith because Devonte Smith is no longer seeing number one coverage. He is now just considered a Z type receiver, which fine enough, but he is not going to draw a number one corner unless a team is playing sides and he's there. A.J. Brown will take that away. But A.J. Brown, in the meantime, is going to take volume. Remember, Devonte Smith wasn't seeing more than 6 targets in most games last year. And now you bring in A.J. Brown. Goddard's going to get a few targets. So I don't know that any receiver on that team tops 115 targets. That could be problematic.
Yeah, A.J. Brown's such a starter. He's going to get his. I like where his ADP is correcting, and I like the value on him now going in the 3rd round instead of the early 2nd. So I'll be in on A.J. Brown if he stays there. Joe, I want to ask you about the New York Giants. Some of my favorite values this year in my early best ball drafts is this is just a trust in the coach, okay? I like the coach. So it's finally functional. So I like where Kenny Golladay is going. I never liked Kenny Golladay, but getting him in the 12th and 13th and 14th round. Talk to me about Golladay, Kadarius Toney, of course, Saquon Barkley, who's now a 3rd round pick in some drafts, 2nd round in other drafts. And then, of course, is Daniel Jones. Now they didn't bring in a credible backup. They brought in Tyrod Taylor. Give me the New York Giants. Are you in on any of them? Who are your favorite guys?
Yeah, none is going to be my short answer for
All right,
this.
Jim, back to you.
I'll give a longer answer. You know that.
I get the idea of liking Brian Daboll, and obviously what he did with the Bills, you have to respect it. There actually is a kind of unique amount of similarities from Daniel Jones to Josh Allen. I know that's blasphemy to say, but the athleticism that Daniel Jones really is best at right now through his career, it was kind of the thing that you were saying the positive was for Josh Allen early on. Now, obviously, Daniel Jones doesn't have the arm strength that Josh Allen does. Few do in the NFL. But you can kind of see where if you're Brian Daboll, like, okay, I can glint and maybe make this kind of work from the way I've done my offense. I did not understand what they did in the draft, at least with the Wan'Dale Robinson pick in particular. That, to me, indicated Kadarius Toney is definitely gone. Like, they're kind of the same roles to me. And Kenny Golladay will have his place right on the outside. You also have Darius Slayton, who I guess they've been shopping around. I would imagine gets cut, and I actually think would be another perfect landing spot for the Packers is like the Sammy Watkins insurance as a speed deep.
I forgot he's on the roster. That's a good reminder.
Well, that's exactly it. They have 5 guys, and this was the issue last year too. Like the Giants overall were not very good. They made a lot of dumb decisions, but they went like 8 or 9 deep at wide receiver. I remember doing at least one of the SiriusXM shows with Mario and being like, Colin Johnson is like their fourth string backup. And Colin Johnson was actually kind of the credible prospect when he went to the Jaguars, and I thought was a good pickup. So it's weird to see them value the certain things they do. Where does all that utility go on offense, and how is it used? Like Brian Daboll might be creative, but can he sort out the chaos that has been that depth chart thus far? I'm not sure. Like I don't think Kenny Golladay fills the Stephon Diggs role, and if you're going to go a 1-for-1 replacement like you were doing with Josh Allen and Daniel Jones, that makes me concerned. He hasn't been healthy, wasn't able to be a touchdown threat last season in similar situations with a personnel perspective. I don't know. I'm not as high on the Giants overall, and I think Saquon Barkley, this is a prove it or shut up season like many people believe. And if you were to stay healthy, it's hard with the work that he's probably given to not be a top 10, 15 back. Can he stay healthy? I mean, we have these same questions about Christian McCaffrey, and yet he's getting drafted in the first round. But, man, I don't know. I'm just down. Yeah, well, right. I don't know if I would either, even in a full-point PPR setting. I guess I would fall in love with other guys. I would really try to talk myself out of Christian McCaffrey. That's the same way I feel about Saquon Barkley too, even in the 3rd round.
Yeah, Joe, you can't win your fantasy draft in the 1st round, but you certainly can lose it. Why take Christian McCaffrey? And this is not directed at you. This is the proverbial you. When you could take Justin Jefferson, when you could take
Cooper Kupp in this draft.
There you go. It's like it's not that we don't like Christian McCaffrey and he can't return to what he was, but why not take the money in the bank and then take a little bit more risk? Every round that the draft progresses, I'm willing to take a little bit more risk. I'm certainly not willing to take the least amount of risk possible in the 1st round. All right, Jim, I want to come back to you because 2 second-year guys that finished, you talked about earlier in this live stream about players that finished the year strong is a good indicator of what we could expect, especially if it worked. Amon-Ra St. Brown tore the roof off. He won me 2 fantasy leagues single-handedly. And Gabe Davis, I think he's still scoring touchdowns from last year. I mean, what was it, 4 or 5 in one game?
Yeah, 4, I think for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Gabe Davis seemed to do all right in the draft, meaning like he dodged some, wide receivers in the first couple rounds. I know that they did get a late guy, Khalil Shakir, that was all right. But start with Amon-Ra, talk about Gabe Davis, and where am I going to draft those guys this year?
Yeah, I think St. Brown is a little bit of a trap because he went nuclear down the stretch last season. There were two things working in his favor. First of all, we'll still have, I keep talking about the two high defenses that give up everything underneath, and Jared Goff took advantage of that. However, TJ Hawkinson missed weeks 14 through 18. Guess when St. Brown went off? In those weeks. So basically, and here was the deal. Even when Hawkinson was healthy, teams treated Hawkinson as the wide receiver one. They ganged up on him, a lot of bodies on him. Well, now Jamison Williams in. So now teams with that speed will not have the luxury to gang up on Hawkinson.
Can we concede though that Jamison Williamson will not be back until Thanksgiving? Yeah,
I'm just hearing now. I mean, heard in the last couple of days they expect him ready. We talked the other day. I'm reading reports out of Detroit. They expect him ready for camp. So I mean, don't know.
He could
it's a 9-month injury. So it's a 9-month injury. That puts him right on that timeline.
All right,
but
fair enough.
So I don't know. Medical, it's hard to say, but ACL surgeries, they're getting better and better and better.
It's like a bruised finger nowadays, right?
Unfortunately. But look at Cam Akers with an Achilles.
Yeah.
Came back and played. So even if Williams is out a few weeks, you're right. But that's an Achilles, right? For sure.
Yeah.
But so the point is this. Look, Amon-Ra St. Brown took great advantage of the situation. But Hawkinson was out. Hawkinson, to me, is an elite tight end. He is going to take at least a significant portion of those middle of the field targets, even if Williams is out. If Williams is in, that's more attention drawn away from TJ Hawkinson. So I think people are drafting St. Brown for the player they got in weeks 14 through 18, and I don't think that world exists.
Gabe Davis,
so the loss of Brian Dable could hurt that offense a bit. I'm concerned that they were so reluctant to put him into a big, heavy role. When they played the Chiefs, it was one of those scheme-dependent games where you saw they were leaving the middle of the field open, and Gabe Davis was running up the seam, and nobody was near him. It was the perfect storm. I like Gabe Davis as a prospect. Loved him last year, and he didn't get playing time. Now, he should get playing time this year, but Dawson Knox started to emerge, and now James Cook is going to be a legitimate receiving threat.
You got Crowder in this draft, too. Crowder joined the receiving core, yeah.
So at the end of the day, yes, high-powered offense. Gabe Davis is going to see targets, but I think he's going to be a lot more volatile than we'd like. So I hate to use the hedge best ball play, but I think there's going to be a lot of really lean weeks for him. We're going to see 3 catches for 25 yards and call it a day because the offense is really going to be changed. Cook changes the dynamic, and I won't go long on this. The Bills have been looking for years. They try to dictate defenses so they see light fronts, and they've done that. But Singletary and Moss never took full advantage of that. If they have speed in the receiving game there, that revolutionizes what their vision of the offense was. And Dable's gone, but I think that legacy part carries on. So Gabe Davis, look, where he's going, I think he's getting a little overdrafted. I think he'll be productive, but I think we're looking at 850 yards in 7 touchdowns. Not bad, but I think he's getting drafted as a little more than that.
Joe, you get the last question of the day. Something that I'm trying to figure out here is the Atlanta backfield. So we got about 2 minutes left before we cut the live stream. Is it Cordell Patterson? Is it the 5th-round rookie, Tyler Algier? Someone's going to get 200 carries in this backfield, right?
Yes, but I'm not sure they're on the roster.
Oh,
that's kind of where I'm at with this. Like, I think the Falcons have a lot of developing and roster construction they could still do. Like, this is a team that's probably bottom 4 or 5 in the NFL, and I think they're okay with it. I think they understand where they're at, which is good from an NFL perspective. The worst thing it could be is somebody who doesn't understand that they are one of the bottom 3 or 4 teams in the NFL. So they could take a chance in a guy that is signing in the offseason, get a compensatory pick, 4th, 5th round, whatever else. We've seen the Ravens, who had 6 4th rounders this year, be successful in that fast. And I think successful organizations are forward thinking in that regard. I would have thought you would do Patterson just like that. If you are a bottom 3 or 4 organization, you let Patterson sign with somebody else and get a compensatory pick and do the same type of thing with whatever other running back, Damian Williams, for example, Algier, for example. I don't know. You're not going to cut Algier as a 5th-round pick, but you get the idea. I thought Patterson right now with the way the Falcons backfield is constructed in the 8th round was value. I was going to take Patterson if he had made it back to my pick because the pass catching alone and what we saw with that offense last year, it's hard to discount. I mean, guys after were Tony Pollard and like Isaiah Spiller, who I love, was drafted around later. There's no way Patterson's in that same vein. I don't think he gets the same workload, though. And I'm not sure it's Algier. I know people like and are chasing the rookies, and that's a fine speculative play in the 10th or 11th round. I just wouldn't be surprised if the Falcons pick up somebody or trade for a running back to do the compensatory pick and flip situation that successful organizations do.
Any quick thoughts, Jim? Lightning round on the Atlanta backfield, or did Joe say it all?
No, Joe said it all, and Cordell Patterson had a career year, and notice they really backed off him down the stretch. And there was a reason behind it. We don't know what it is.
He was a little banged up, but you know what? Is it unfathomable that the guy who's the most productive runner is Marcus Mariota?
I would take that prop. I like that one. That's an interesting one. Like over plus like 120 to say 430 rushing yards or over. Yeah, that would require him to be the starter the entire season, which maybe we'll have to spoil in 2 or 3 weeks. Right. I think Desmond Ridder could get to that point, but yeah, that's an interesting one.
He's Joe Bartel. Find him on Twitter at JB Fantasy Sports. Everyone knows Jim Coventry as well at Jim Coventry NFL. Joe, I like that you are pumping out the rookie content right now, your NFL draft takes, and Jim Coventry also with his polarizing players column every week. Go to RotoWire right now if you want to check that out. Some of it's behind the paywall, some of it's not, but you can see everything on RotoWire right now for free for 10 days. Just go to rotowire.com/try. And if you're watching this video on social media, consider clicking the like button. Really consider clicking the subscribe button if you want to get more videos like this. We'll be back in a weekly with some more video content talking NFL. Anything else that I missed from you, Joe? You want anybody to know about any what you're working on right now?
No, I'm happy we had the day 2 fantasy fall article that you're referring to. I went over every skill player drafted in rounds 2 and 3. That's where I talked about David Bell quite extensively. And, if I had an opportunity, Isaiah Spiller would have fit that list too. But I think there's a lot to go over there. And Jerry Donabedian did the fantasy day 3 fallout. He actually pointed a few different guys as well too that were really interesting to kind of consider.
I'll link that article in here, but yeah, you're right up on that is what caused me to push the button on David Bell in my rookie draft. So your content actually implements there. Jim, did I miss anything from you?
No, just the audience. Thanks for those that posted comments. No, we didn't get to them all, but we appreciate you. Your time's valuable, and thanks for hanging with us.
All right. Well said, guys. We'll see you in later this week with some more RotoWire fantasy football YouTube content.